I like hearing a little bit about people's history and where they come from and growing up and all that. You are Canadian, and I've had a lot of Canadians on lately. I find there's something about Canadians in general that I like. What is it about Canadians that leads to a certain pleasant disposition?
Well, we're so reasonable. We're so polite. Sometimes people say the motto of Canada is peace, order, and good government. Yeah. It's a country that has been diverse for quite some time. Quebec, where I grew up, has an English-speaking community and a French-speaking community. And we didn't begin with a revolution, unlike the United States, but we negotiated our way to independence. We were part of the British Empire, then the British Commonwealth, and kind of have that British reserve and politeness.
Yeah.
So that we have some things going for us.
A couple of things going for it. Yeah, at least all the Americans end up moving up there. Right. If things keep going this way, although
we might build a wall.
Yeah, right. You guys may end up building the wall. Exactly. Tell me a little bit about growing up. Your family. What kind of family you grew up in?
I grew up in the English-speaking section of Montreal. In Montreal, it was pretty segregated when I grew up. I grew up in the Jewish English-speaking community, which was known for producing, among others, Leonard Cohen, who was a contemporary of my mother's, the author Mordecai Richler, who was a contemporary of my father's, William Shatner, Burt Bacharach.
Wow.
Saul Bellow spent his childhood in Montreal. So it's a small community that has a number of people that we're proud of.
Yeah, what do you make of that? That so many, I mean, that's a pretty diverse, interesting group of people right there, and I'm sure there are others.
It may just be that having many cultural influences, both Canada is really dominated by the United States. It really is the 800-pound gorilla next door.
Yeah.
So there's the American influence, the British influence, the French influence. Perhaps it's just being in a cosmopolitan, diverse community that helped with that, and of course the Jewish influence. Although it was not, I didn't grow up, and none of the people that I mentioned grew up in an ultra-Orthodox community. I grew up with a Reform temple. We didn't take God all that seriously, but we did take Jewish identity seriously.
Yeah.
I don't remember a moment in which I decided, I'm an atheist. It just was not a big issue one way or another.
Do you find that to be sort of standard thing with most secular Jews? I think that's sort of, at least the ones that I've been talking to on this show that I think are sort of out there more, that seems to be a thing, that there's an ethnic identity or a cultural identity that's separate from the belief part.
Absolutely, and I think that's more true of Judaism than it is of, say, Catholicism, where the belief really is stipulated. In Judaism, there's a bit of a kind of don't ask, don't tell, as long as you obey the laws and rituals.
Right.
If you keep the Sabbath, if you have matzah on Passover, then you're a good Jew, and what you believe is just not as important. One rabbi said to my wife Rebecca Goldstein, another secular Jew, well-known a secular humanist writer, when she talked about her novel, 36 Arguments for the Existence of God, a work of fiction, which is kind of the great atheist novel. And she spoke at a Jewish community center, and I was a little worried whether there'd be some pushback from the rabbi who introduced her. And afterwards he went over and he said, there's nothing in Judaism that says you have to believe in God. You just can't believe in more than one of them.
That's pretty perfect. Do you think there's an inherent problem there, sort of disconnecting God from religion, even if it really is, just for the longevity of it, let's say?
Oh, yeah, it's a good question. I think that may have been part of the explanation for why, there's so many secular Jewish intellectuals kind of immersed in argument, disputation, particularly about morals and ethics, but without but it was all argument, disputation. It wasn't a catechism that you had to recite. There wasn't a set of beliefs that you have to have. So there was a tradition of disputation. That's what the rabbis were famous for, the pill pull, the hair splitting, and maybe that was a contributor as well. But I went to public schools. In fact, when you go to public schools in Quebec, in my childhood, it meant you went to Protestant schools because it was divided along religious lines. There were Protestant schools and Catholic schools.
Oh, interesting.
Protestant meant un-Catholic, basically, everyone else, including the Muslims and the Jews and the Chinese and so on. It was a bizarre system.
Yeah, how interesting.
Patently unconstitutional in this country. And I actually got a pretty serious Protestant religious education. I sang hymns. We said the Lord's Prayer every day. I learned about the life of Jesus.
So they had the Jews and the Muslims and everyone
all
else
of them in the
getting a Protestant
schools. Yeah. And at one point, I remember I think I was 8 or 9, and actually we didn't even belong to a temple. And I said to my mother, one of my friends said that Jews aren't supposed to believe in Jesus. Should I not believe in Jesus anymore? And she sent me to Hebrew school so fast it made my head spin.
That's hilarious.
And then my teachers, because they couldn't hire Catholic teachers either, and virtually everyone in Quebec is among the Francophone community are Catholics. So they actually hired Algerian and Tunisian and Moroccan Jews to teach French to the Jewish and Protestant kids of Montreal. The Protestant kids of Montreal did not learn French from native Quebecois. We learned it from Egyptian and Tunisian immigrants. So that's how bizarre it was.
I'm pretty sure I know the subject of your next book. I mean, it sounds like there's just so much richness just in that.